Have you ever stayed in a hotel so quiet that it felt like someone was in the room with you? Imagine checking into a place and never truly leaving. The Blackwood Hotel doesn't advertise itself like other establishments. There are no glossy brochures, no five-star reviews on travel websites. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of a remote mountain town, it stands like a relic from another era. Its stone facade, once grand and inviting, is now weathered. The windows darken like empty eyes staring back at you. But if you ask the locals, they'll tell you the truth. They avoid it at all costs. They won't speak much, though. A knowing glance, a quick shake of the head, and they'll warn you with the same words. The Blackwood is a place for the lost. It all started decades ago, back when the Blackwood was the pride of the region, built in 1924. The hotel was meant to be a luxurious escape for the wealthy. Grand parties filled its ballroom. Laughter echoed down its hallways, and its towering structure glittered against the backdrop of the mountains. But beneath its charm, something dark was festering. Strange things began happening almost immediately. Guests reported hearing whispers in their rooms at night, whispers that grew louder if they dared to listen too closely. Objects would move on their own, keys disappearing from nightstands only to reappear in locked drawers, curtains fluttering when the windows were sealed shut. Some even claimed to see figures standing at the foot of their beds, watching silently, vanishing the moment they screamed. The management dismissed these claims as figments of overactive imaginations. All buildings have their quirks, they'd say, but those quirks became harder to ignore when guests began disappearing. Take the case of the Harpers. A couple on their honeymoon, full of life and love, checked into the Blackwood one summer evening. They were assigned room 217, known for its stunning mountain view. The staff remembered them well, their laughter, their bright smiles. But by morning, the Harpers were gone. Their belongings were still neatly arranged in the room, their car untouched in the parking lot. There was no sign of forced entry, no evidence of foul play. Just an empty room and the faint scent of something metallic in the air. The police were called and an investigation ensued. Every inch of the hotel was searched, but no trace of the Harpers was ever found. The case went cold, filed away as another unsolved mystery. But for the Blackwood, it was only the beginning. Room 217 earned a sinister reputation. Guests who stayed there often left before dawn, pale and trembling, refusing to speak of what they'd experienced. Those brave or foolish enough to stay longer reported similar tales. Whispers that called their names, shadows that seemed to breathe, and a suffocating sense of being watched. And yet, the Blackwood continued to operate. Its glory days were long gone, but travelers still stumbled upon it, drawn by its eerie charm or perhaps something deeper, something unseen. The staff changed frequently. Most left after a single encounter with the inexplicable. But the owner, a man named Elias Grayson, remained. Elias was an enigma, tall and gaunt, with a face carved by years of hardship. He spoke little and seemed to appear only when needed. Those who worked for him said he had an uncanny way of knowing things he shouldn't. What time you'd arrive, what you'd order for dinner, even your deepest fears. They also said Elias never slept. His office light glowed through the night, a beacon in the darkness, and some swore they saw shadows moving within it even when he was alone. Then one fateful night, everything changed. It was a stormy evening in October, the kind of night when the wind howls like a wounded animal and rain lashes against the windows with relentless fury. A single guest checked in, a man named Thomas Gray. Thomas was a traveling salesman, weary from the road. He'd heard the rumors about the Blackwood, but laughed them off. Ghost stories to scare kids, he said to the receptionist, flashing a confident grin. He was given room 217. At first, everything seemed normal. He unpacked his bag, settled into the creaky armchair by the window, and watched the storm rage outside. But as the hours passed, a strange unease began to creep over him. The whispers started around midnight, faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, but growing louder, more distinct. They weren't words he recognized, more like a guttural murmur, as if the building itself was speaking. Thomas tried to dismiss it, chalking it up to exhaustion. But then he saw it, a shadow darker than the stormy night, shifting in the corner of the room. He turned on the lamp, but the light did nothing to dispel the darkness. It only seemed to grow, stretching toward him like smoke. And then the door creaked open. Thomas froze. The hallway was empty, yet he felt it, a presence, heavy and suffocating, pressing into the room. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. The last thing he remembered was a shadow engulfing him, a coldness unlike anything he'd ever felt, and a single whisper that cut through the silence. Stay. When the staff checked room 217 the next morning, they found it empty. Thomas's belongings were untouched, his car still parked outside. But his bed was made, and on the pillow lay a single black feather. This was no ordinary hotel. The Blackwood wasn't just haunted. It was alive. Its walls held secrets. Its shadows hungered for more than fear. So, if you ever find yourself on a lonely road, passing through a town that seems forgotten by time, and you see the lights of an old, towering hotel beckoning you, think twice before you stop. The Blackwood is always open, but not everyone who checks in comes out. Stay with me as we uncover the chilling events that unfolded in this cursed place. What we're about to share will make you think twice before booking your next stay. Some stories are meant to entertain, but this one, it's a warning. The Blackwood Hotel story begins in 1924, in a secluded mountain town surrounded by misty peaks and dense forests. Built as an escape for the wealthy, the hotel stood as a beacon of luxury and refinement. Its architecture was a testament to grandeur, with tall, sweeping arches, ornate chandeliers, and sprawling staircases that seemed to spiral into eternity. The Blackwood wasn't just a place to stay. It was a destination, a symbol of prestige for those who could afford its splendor. When it first opened, it hosted lavish parties in its grand ballroom, where champagne flowed endlessly and the echoes of laughter danced through the halls. Guests came from all corners of the country, drawn by tales of its unparalleled service and breathtaking views. Its location, nestled in the heart of an untouched wilderness, offered solitude and serenity. But beneath its opulent facade lay something darker, a shadow that would grow over time, consuming everything in its path. In its early days, the Blackwood seemed like a dream. But dreams have a way of turning into nightmares. The first whispers of trouble came just a year after its opening. In 1925, a maid named Lila disappeared while cleaning one of the rooms. Her cart was found abandoned in the hallway, the linens neatly folded, but there was no trace of her. Some claimed she had run away, but others, those who knew her well, insisted she wouldn't have left without saying goodbye. Then came the fire in 1933. A blaze broke out in the East Wing, trapping several guests and staff. Witnesses described the flames as unnatural, moving as though alive, consuming the wing in mere minutes. While the cause of the fire was officially declared an accident, a faulty electrical wire, rumors suggested otherwise. Survivors spoke of hearing strange laughter echoing through the smoke, and one guest claimed to have seen a figure standing in the flames, untouched by the heat. The hotel was rebuilt, but the scars of that night lingered. Rooms in the new wing were said to carry an oppressive air, and guests often complained of hearing faint screams in the dead of night. Over the years, the disappearances began to pile up. Couples, travelers, even entire families vanished without a trace. Each time, the same eerie details emerged. Belongings left behind, doors locked from the inside, and the faint scent of something metallic in the air. The Blackwood Hotel was more than just a building. It had a presence. Its narrow hallways twisted in ways that seemed to defy logic, leading guests in circles. Doors creaked open on their own, revealing empty rooms where cold drafts whispered like unseen voices. The windows, tall and imposing, seemed to watch anyone who dared walk past, their glass reflecting shadows that didn't belong. The grand staircase, once a symbol of elegance, became a source of unease. Guests reported feeling as though they were being followed as they ascended, the faint sound of footsteps echoing behind them. Some even claimed to see fleeting glimpses of figures in the mirrors lining the walls. Figures that disappeared the moment they turned to look. And then there was the ballroom, once the heart of the Blackwoods' revelry. It became a place of dread. By the 1950s, the parties had ceased and the room stood empty, but the chandeliers still swayed as though moved by unseen hands, and the faint strains of music could sometimes be heard late at night. Every haunted place has its keeper, and the Blackwood was no exception. Elias Grayson, the enigmatic owner, was as much a part of the hotel's lore as the ghost that supposedly haunted it. Elias came to the Blackwood in 1947, purchasing it after the previous owner mysteriously vanished. Elias was a man of few words, his presence as haunting as the hotel itself. Tall and thin, with sharp features and piercing eyes, he seemed to know everything about his guests before they even arrived. He ran the hotel with an iron will, but there was something unsettling about him. Staff whispered of seeing him wander in the halls late at night, speaking softly to someone or something that wasn't there. Some claimed Elias was a guardian, protecting the hotel from the forces within. Others believed he was the source of its darkness, a man who had struck a deal with whatever haunted the Blackwood. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: Elias and the Blackwood were inseparable. The town surrounding the Blackwood wasn't immune to its influence. In the early years, the locals embraced the hotel, welcoming the wealth and prestige it brought. But as the tragedies mounted, their enthusiasm waned. By the 1970s, the town had turned its back on the Blackwood entirely. Shops closed their doors to travelers seeking directions, and the once busy roads leading to the hotel grew overgrown and neglected. Residents spoke in hushed tones about the cursed building on the hill, and children were warned to never venture near it. Yet for all their fear, the townsfolk couldn't deny its pull. Every now and then, someone would see lights flickering in the windows or hear the distant echo of a piano playing. The Blackwood is alive, they'd say, shaking their heads. And it's always hungry. Photos from the Blackwood's prime reveal a chilling juxtaposition. In one image, a group of smiling guests poses in the grand lobby, unaware of the shadowy figure standing just behind them, barely visible in the corner. In another, a waiter balances a tray of champagne flutes in the ballroom, his reflection in the mirror showing a face twisted in fear. Then there's the infamous photo from 1982, taken by a traveling journalist. It shows the front of the hotel bathed in moonlight. At first glance, it seems unremarkable, until you notice the dozens of faces staring out from the darkened windows. The journalist, who stayed the night to write a feature on the Blackwood, vanished without a trace. His camera was found in room 217, its film containing only that single haunting image. The Blackwood Hotel's backstory is more than just a collection of tragedies. It's a warning, a place where time stands still, where the walls seem to breathe, and where those who enter may never leave. As we continue our journey into its dark corridors, remember this: some places are built to house the living, but the Blackwood was made for something else entirely. Stay with me as we unravel the layers of its chilling history and uncover the truth that lies hidden within its walls. What happened here was no accident, and it's far from over. It was 1978, a crisp autumn evening when the Miller family checked into the Blackwood Hotel. They had planned a quiet weekend getaway, hoping for some peace away from the bustle of city life. The hotel, with its towering facade and eerie charm, seemed perfect for their retreat. They were assigned room 304, a corner room with a view of the surrounding forest. The room was cozy, with heavy drapes, a vintage dresser, and a soft, worn carpet underfoot. It carried an old-world charm, though something about it felt off. The family brushed it off as a peculiar atmosphere of an old hotel. That night, as the family settled in, Emily, their 8-year-old daughter, was restless. She kept glancing at the corner of the room, her eyes wide with unease. "Emily, what's wrong?" her mother, Margaret, asked gently. "There's someone there," Emily whispered, pointing to the shadowy corner. Her parents exchanged glances, dismissing it as a child's imagination. "It's just the shadows playing tricks," her father, Robert, assured her. He walked over to the corner, switching on the lamp to show her there was nothing there. Satisfied, Emily finally crawled under the covers and drifted off to sleep. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the heater. But as the night deepened, the atmosphere in room 304 shifted. Around 2:15 a.m., Emily woke up screaming. Her cries pierced the silence, jolting her parents awake. Margaret rushed to her side, finding her trembling and clutching the blankets tightly. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice shaking. Emily pointed to the foot of her bed, her face pale. There was a shadow. It was standing there, just staring at me. Robert immediately turned on all the lights, but the room was empty. The door was locked from the inside, and the windows were shut tight. There was no one else there. Still, the unease in the room was palpable. And then they saw it, the claw marks. On the wall near the headboard, deep, jagged scratches marred the wallpaper. They were fresh, as if something or someone had been clawing at it just moments before. Margaret ran her fingers over the marks, her stomach sinking. "Did you do this?" Robert asked Emily, though he knew it wasn't possible. She shook her head frantically. "I told you," Emily whispered. "It's here. It's watching us." The air in the room grew icy cold. Robert and Margaret could feel it now, the oppressive presence that hung over them. There was a faint metallic smell in the air, sharp and unpleasant, and the silence felt alive, like it was pressing in on them. Margaret decided they couldn't stay in the room any longer. Grabbing Emily's hand, she told Robert, "We're leaving. Now." As they gathered their belongings, the lights began to flicker. A low, guttural sound echoed from the corner of the room, the same corner Emily had been afraid of earlier. Robert froze, staring into the shadows. For a moment, he thought he saw something move, something dark and indistinct, like smoke curling into the shape of a figure. But when he blinked, it was gone. "Hurry!" Margaret urged, her voice trembling. The family rushed out of room 304, not bothering to check out at the front desk. They piled into their car and sped away, leaving the Blackwood Hotel behind. The next morning, Robert called the hotel to report what had happened. The receptionist listened politely, but seemed unsurprised. "Room 304, you said?" she asked, her tone neutral. "Yes," Robert replied. "What's going on in that room?" "We found claw marks on the walls. For God's sake." There was a pause on the other end of the line before the receptionist replied. "Room 304 has always been difficult. You're not the first guest to complain about strange occurrences there. But don't worry. We'll have the maintenance team look into it." Robert hung up, feeling both frustrated and deeply unsettled. He couldn't shake the feeling that they'd narrowly escaped something far worse. The Miller family never returned to the Blackwood Hotel, but their story became part of its infamous lore. Over the years, other guests in room 304 reported similar experiences. Cold spots, strange noises, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Some claimed to see shadows moving on their own, while others woke up to find fresh claw marks on the walls or furniture. No one could explain the source of the marks, and maintenance staff often found them too deep to have been made by human hands. The hotel management tried everything, blessing the room, repainting the walls, even sealing it off for a time, but nothing worked. Room 304 remained an enigma, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead seemed to blur. If you found claw marks appearing out of nowhere, would you stay and investigate or run as fast as you could? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, what happened to the Millers could happen to anyone. Stay tuned. because this is only the beginning of the Blackwood Hotel's dark secrets. In 2019, the Blackwood Hotel made headlines once again. This time, it wasn't from a terrified guest or a whispered rumor. It was from a group of professional paranormal investigators who dared to spend an entire weekend in the infamous Room 304. The team, known as Haunt Seekers Paranormal, had heard the countless tales surrounding the Blackwood and decided to uncover the truth for themselves. Equipped with cameras, motion detectors, and audio recording devices, they entered the hotel with both skepticism and curiosity. What they left with, however, was something they never could have prepared for. The team arrived at the Blackwood on a chilly October evening, a perfect setting for their ghost hunt. The hotel staff, though polite, seemed uneasy as they handed over the key to room 304. "Good luck," the receptionist said with a faint smile, her tone more ominous than reassuring. The investigators set up their equipment in the room, lining the walls with infrared cameras and placing motion detectors near the corners. An EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, recorder sat on the nightstand, ready to pick up any whispers from the unseen. At first, the night was uneventful. The team joked about the hotel's eerie reputation as they monitored their equipment. But around 2 a.m., the mood shifted. The first strange occurrence was subtle, a faint creaking sound coming from the wardrobe. One of the investigators, Lisa, walked over to check it out. "It's probably just a wood settling," she said, reaching for the handle. But as soon as she touched it, the door swung open violently, slamming against the wall with enough force to shake the room. "Did you see that?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. The others nodded, their eyes fixed on the wardrobe. As they reviewed the footage later, they discovered something chilling. Just before the door swung open, the camera captured a shadowy figure standing near the wardrobe, one that disappeared the moment the door moved. But the most disturbing moment came at 3:15 a.m. The team was conducting an EVP session, asking questions into the darkness in hopes of eliciting a response. "Is anyone here with us?" one of them asked. For several seconds, there was only silence. Then, through the recorder, a voice came through, low, guttural, and unmistakably clear. "Leave now." The team froze, their breaths caught in their throats. The voice was male, but there were no men in the room. The EVP recorder confirmed that the voice hadn't come from any of the investigators. After the voice, the activity in room 304 escalated. The motion detectors began to go off sporadically. Despite no one being near them, a chair slid across the room on its own, and one of the cameras caught a faint orb of light moving erratically near the ceiling. By dawn, the team decided they had gathered enough evidence. They packed up their equipment and left, visibly shaken. The footage and recordings from the investigation quickly went viral. Clips of the shadowy figure by the wardrobe, the disembodied voice, and the moving chair were shared across social media, sparking debates about the existence of the paranormal. Skeptics argued that the phenomena could be explained by faulty equipment or stage effects, but the investigators insisted otherwise. "We visited hundreds of haunted locations," Lisa said in an interview, "but nothing compares to what we experienced at the Blackwood. That place that's alive. But why does the Blackwood Hotel seem to be a hub for such intense paranormal activity? Some believe it's the result of the countless tragedies that have occurred there, the disappearances, the strange deaths, and the unexplainable phenomena. Others think the hotel itself might be cursed, built on land that was never meant to be disturbed. A few even speculate that the hotel feeds off the energy of its guests, growing stronger with each moment of fear. The Blackwood Hotel continues to operate to this day, and room 304 is still available for brave or foolish guests willing to take the risk. But with every new visitor comes a new story, a new layer to the hotel's dark reputation. So what do you think? Could this all be coincidence? Or is there something darker at play? Something that refuses to let the Blackwood Hotel rest? If you're ever in the area, you might be tempted to visit. But a word of caution, don't check into room 304 unless you're ready to meet whatever lingers in the shadows. Would you spend the night in room 304? Do you believe the investigators' footage is real, or is it just an elaborate hoax? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are true. Stay tuned, because there's more to uncover about the Blackwood Hotel. The second story, the vanishing in room 217. In 1993, the Blackwood Hotel's eerie reputation took an even darker turn. A solo traveler, David Harper, checked into room 217 for what was supposed to be a peaceful weekend retreat. But what unfolded over the next 48 hours became one of the most chilling mysteries in the hotel's history. David was a history professor, known for his love of solitude and old architecture. He had chosen the Blackwood for its vintage charm and the promise of quiet. Staff recalled him as polite and reserved, with no indication that anything was amiss. On his first evening, David dined alone in the hotel's restaurant, quietly reading a book. Witnesses say he seemed perfectly at ease. Later, he returned to room 217, wishing the front desk clerk a good night. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. 2 days later, a maid entered room 217 to clean. She was startled to find David's belongings neatly arranged. His suitcase by the closet, his wallet and watch on the nightstand, and his clothes folded on the bed. But there was no sign of David himself. Alarmed, the maid reported the situation to hotel management. A search was conducted, but David was nowhere to be found. His car was still in the parking lot, and there was no record of him checking out. The police were called, and that's when things took a bizarre turn. The hotel security cameras showed David leaving his room at exactly 3:03 a.m. on his second night. He appeared calm, but something about his behavior was unsettling. He wasn't heading toward the lobby or the elevators. Instead, he seemed to be following something or someone that wasn't visible on the footage. His gaze was fixed ahead, his steps deliberate, as though he were in a trance. The hallway camera captured him walking down the corridor, turning the corner, and then, abruptly, the footage cut to static. When the video resumed a few seconds later, David was gone. But for a split second before the static, a shadowy figure appeared behind him. A figure that didn't resemble anyone else staying at the hotel. David Harper's disappearance remained unsolved. Despite extensive searches of the hotel and surrounding areas, no trace of him was ever found. But room 217 didn't stay quiet for long. Over the years, guests staying in the room reported hearing faint, rhythmic footsteps outside their door at night, always at 3:03 a.m. Some claimed the footsteps would stop just outside their room, as if someone were standing there waiting. Others described hearing a knock at the door, only to find no one there. And in one particularly chilling account, a guest woke up to find all their belongings neatly rearranged, just like David's had done. What happened to David Harper that night? Some believe he encountered a malevolent spirit tied to the Blackwood, one that lured him into the depths of the hotel. Others think the shadowy figure seen in the footage wasn't a ghost, but a manifestation of the hotel itself, its dark energy taking form. Skeptics argue that David simply walked away from his life, staging his disappearance to escape personal troubles. But this theory doesn't explain the eerie phenomena that followed or the sudden static in the security footage. As if David's disappearance wasn't unsettling enough, a former staff member came forward years later with a disturbing confession. According to this employee, room 217 had a history long before David's stay. In the 1950s, a bellhop was found dead in the room under mysterious circumstances. The cause of death was ruled asphyxiation, but there were no signs of struggle or explanation for how it happened. After that incident, the room was closed off for nearly 2 decades. It was only reopened in the 1970s, after the hotel underwent renovations. But the energy in room 217 never changed. To this day, room 217 is one of the most requested and avoided rooms at the Blackwood Hotel. Paranormal enthusiasts flock to it, hoping to experience something otherworldly, while others refuse to set foot near it. For those brave enough to stay, the warnings are clear. If you hear footsteps at 3:03 a.m., don't open the door. And if you feel compelled to leave your room in the middle of the night, resist the urge. Because whatever lured David Harper into the darkness might still be waiting. What would you do if you woke up to footsteps outside your door? Would you investigate? Or would you stay frozen in your bed, hoping they would go away? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, some mysteries are better left unsolved. Stay tuned, because the shadows of the Blackwood Hotel still have more secrets to reveal. At this point in our journey into the eerie depths of the Blackwood Hotel, it's impossible not to wonder how much of this could be real. Paranormal experts call the Blackwood a hotspot for spiritual energy, while skeptics dismiss it as an overactive imagination fueled by folklore. But what about you? Have you ever stayed in a hotel that made your skin crawl? Perhaps you heard footsteps in an empty hallway, saw a shadow move where no one should have been, or felt the unmistakable weight of someone sitting on your bed when you were completely alone. These moments defy explanation, yet they linger in our minds like unfinished chapters of a story. And who knows? Your experience might hold the missing piece to the mysteries of places like the Blackwood. We want to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below, and who knows? Your tale could be the highlight of a future video. Could you stay the night? Now, here's a question to ponder. Would you spend a night in room 217? Knowing the chilling legacy of that room, from David Harper's disappearance to the phantom footsteps at 3:03 a.m., could you lock yourself in and wait for the unknown to visit? Some of you might laugh and say, absolutely not. But there's always someone brave or curious enough to tempt fate. What about you? Imagine lying in bed as the clock ticks closer to 3 a.m. The room is quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. Suddenly you hear it, a faint knock at the door. Would you open it, or would you stay frozen, praying the noise stops? Let us know in the comments. Would you face the fear head-on, or would you be out of there before the clock struck 3? While many have dismissed tales of haunted hotels as folklore or exaggerated stories, others swear by their experiences. Paranormal investigators who've stayed at the Blackwood Hotel have shared unsettling evidence. Thermal imaging showing human-shaped figures where no one stood, EVP recordings of chilling whispers, and even sudden temperature drops caught on camera. But for every piece of evidence, there's a skeptic ready to call it fake. So, where do you stand? Are you a believer in the paranormal, or do you think it's all a hoax? Share your opinion with us. Every perspective adds to the discussion. Let's settle this once and for all. What's the scariest part of the Blackwood Hotel story so far? 1. The ghostly figure behind David Harper in the security footage. 2. The claw marks on the walls of room 304. 3. The phantom footsteps outside room 217. 4. The unexplained history of the bellhop's death. Vote in the comments, and we'll reveal the audience's pick in an upcoming video. If you thought the stories you've heard so far were unsettling, brace yourself. Because the final twist in the Blackwood Hotel's history will leave you questioning everything. What if the haunting isn't tied to the guests or even the building itself? What if the very land beneath the hotel holds a dark secret? Stay tuned, because we're about to uncover the most chilling chapter yet. Before we dive back in, here's something to think about. Why do certain places seem to trap energy, good or bad? Some believe traumatic events leave an imprint on the environment, creating a sort of psychic residue. Could this explain the Blackwood Hotel's unshakable aura of dread? Or is it something more sinister, something sentient that feeds on fear and despair? As we unravel the next layer of this mystery, keep that question in mind, because what we're about to uncover might make you think twice about where you sleep tonight. If this story has you hooked and maybe a little on edge, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a chilling tale like this one. And remember, the comment section is your space to share your thoughts, theories, and personal experiences. Whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or someone who's simply curious, your input is what keeps this community alive. Now, take a deep breath and prepare yourself. The next chapter of the Blackwood Hotel story is waiting. and it's darker than anything we've uncovered so far. Unearthing the Blackwood's darkest secret, the Blackwood Hotel had always been shrouded in mystery, its walls echoing with stories of the unexplained. But in 2001, a discovery was made that sent shockwaves through the small mountain town and reframed every terrifying event that had occurred within the hotel's shadowy halls. The hotel's basement had long been a place of avoidance, even among staff. Dimly lit and perpetually damp, it seemed to exude a strange energy. Maintenance workers spoke of cold drafts that came from nowhere and an unnerving sensation of being watched. In October 2001, a small team was sent to renovate the basement and convert it into additional storage space. What they uncovered would halt the project indefinitely. While clearing debris near an old foundation wall, one of the workers accidentally dislodged a section of bricks. Behind it lay a hidden passageway, an entrance to a series of underground tunnels no one had known existed. The tunnels stretched deep beneath the property, their walls carved from rough stone and adorned with strange, cryptic symbols. Flickering flashlight beams revealed remnants of rituals long past. Broken candles, rusted blades, and rotted wooden idols that seemed to stare back at those who dared to look. As the team ventured further, the air grew colder and more oppressive. One worker reported hearing faint whispers, though the rest of the crew swore they heard nothing. Then they found it. At the end of the largest tunnel lay an open chamber. The sight within was nothing short of horrifying. A mass grave, with dozens of skeletal remains piled haphazardly. But it wasn't just the sheer number of bodies that chilled them. It was the way they were arranged. Each skeleton bore signs of ritualistic mutilation. Their hands were bound, and many skulls had been marked with those same cryptic symbols carved into the tunnel walls. Scattered among the remains were artifacts, candles, ceremonial knives, and pages of tattered parchment inscribed with what appeared to be an ancient language. The most chilling discovery? A large stone altar at the center of the chamber, stained dark with what could only be dried blood. Local historians and experts were brought in to analyze the artifacts and remains. Their findings were both disturbing and illuminating. The symbols and rituals appeared to date back to the late 19th century, decades before the Blackwood Hotel was even constructed. These weren't random occult practices. They were deliberate, calculated ceremonies meant to summon and awaken an ancient, malevolent force. The artifacts suggested that the rituals had been performed repeatedly over many years. But then, they stopped abruptly. Around the time the hotel was built in 1924, the discovery raised unsettling questions. What if the Blackwood wasn't just a hotel built on cursed land, but a continuation of the rituals themselves? What if the very act of constructing the hotel was part of the summoning process? Suddenly, the whispers, the shadows, the claw marks, and the disappearances made an eerie kind of sense. The hotel wasn't haunted in the traditional sense. It was alive, a vessel for something ancient and unspeakable, feeding off the fear and suffering of its occupants. The discovery didn't come without its costs. 2 workers refused to re-enter the tunnels after reporting vivid nightmares and the feeling of being followed. A 3rd worker disappeared entirely a week later, leaving behind only his tools and a cryptic note that read, "I saw it. It's watching us." Fearing public backlash and further incidents, the hotel's management sealed the basement and dismissed the events as an unverified historical find. But those who knew the truth couldn't shake the feeling that sealing the tunnels had only trapped something far more sinister inside. Paranormal researchers have theorized that the rituals discovered beneath the Blackwood were not random acts of worship, but attempts to awaken or appease an ancient entity. This being, described in fragmented accounts from the parchment, was said to exist beyond human understanding, feeding on fear and despair. The hotel, they argue, became the perfect feeding ground. Its guests provided an endless supply of fear, whether through the paranormal experiences they endured or the lingering unease that seemed to cling to every corner of the building. And what of those who disappeared? Were they merely victims of tragic circumstances? Or had they been claimed by the entity, Their souls consumed to sustain its existence. Adding to the mystery was a piece of security footage recovered years later, filmed shortly before the basement was sealed. It showed a lone worker walking into the tunnel entrance, his flashlight flickering. Moments later, the screen filled with static. When the footage resumed, the worker was gone. In his place, a shadowy figure stood at the entrance, its form shifting and indistinct. Then, as abruptly as it appeared, the figure vanished into the darkness. What makes a place evil? Is it the actions of those who inhabit it? Or is there something deeper, something older, that imprints itself on the very land? The Blackwood Hotel stands as a chilling testament to this question. Its history is not just one of hauntings and disappearances, but of something far more sinister. A force that defies explanation and continues to linger, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. To this day, the basement remains sealed and the hotel operates under strict discretion. But whispers persist among staff and guests alike. Strange noises from below, faint chanting in the dead of night, and shadows that don't belong to anyone. One thing is certain: the Blackwood Hotel is no ordinary building. It is a place where the past refuses to stay buried, where the walls hide secrets, and where the shadows themselves are alive. So, the next time you book a stay at a charming old hotel, take a moment to wonder what lies beneath, and more importantly, will you make it out? The Blackwood Hotel remains an enigma, a place where the lines between reality and the supernatural blur, and where every whispered story adds another layer to its chilling legend. Over the decades, it has claimed more than just its share of fear. It has claimed lives, sanity, and perhaps even souls. Some hotels are just places to rest, a stop on a long journey. Others are destinations of their own, places you never truly leave. And the Blackwood Hotel? Well, it's always taking reservations. The question is, would you dare book a stay? The lights dim. The haunting piano score begins to swell. Faint echoes of whispers weaving through the melody. A shadow crosses the screen, a figure barely visible, standing motionless in the background. As the camera pulls back from a view of the grand, looming facade of the hotel, the final chilling words appear. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Blackwood's dark history. But remember, some stories don't stay stories for long. They find a way to come back to life. Now, it's your turn. Have you ever had an encounter with the unexplainable? A hotel that didn't feel quite right? Share your story in the comments. And if you enjoyed unraveling the Blackwood secrets, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more tales waiting for you. Tales that just might keep you awake at night.